Fantastic that you set the level of expectations that high, that this is the conference within the conference, and you need to have some sort of code on your slides, because I didn't have any lines of code on my slide, but then I didn't send in my slides in time, so I can use my laptop, because I'm a lazy person, you know. And just for you, I copied in some lines of code. Visual Basic 6, probably 15 years old, hope you like it. Now let's get started. I actually want to talk about agile transitions and how Tricentis, the company I work for, how the transition worked out for us. And this is actually a quote from Patrick DeBow, one of the fathers of the DevOps movement, and he said, "Let's face it, where we are right now sucks." And I think I can talk about this transition because of two reasons. One reason is the history that I have with Tricentis is quite remarkable, and also the history of the company is quite remarkable. When I joined more than a decade ago, we were actually not even 10 people, just a bunch of guys in Vienna. So nowadays you would call it a startup, but back in 2003, it wasn't called a startup. We just were a small company working for a single customer in Vienna. And the company since then changed a lot. First in terms of size, so I was like the 7th person joining. Now we are close to 300. Second, in terms of geography, when, as I said, we had a single customer in Vienna. We were operating just in Vienna. Now we operate globally. We have offices all over the world, and we have development teams in multiple countries. And third, in terms of development methodology, when I joined, I didn't see the office for the first couple of years, because we just worked at our customer on site, single customer, and when we grew in size, we worked at several customers on site, and the development methodology I would call chaos. So we developed for our customers, we changed our core elements, our core components at our customers, and we left it behind at our customers. So we had multiple customers with multiple versions of our product. That's how we operated back then. When we grew, we tried to be more professional, and it swayed into the completely opposite direction. So we had a fenced-in development department. We didn't talk to customers at all if we were able to avoid it, and it was very much waterfall-driven development. And for the last couple of years, we now changed again. So what we swayed into the opposite direction too much, we tried to correct, and we saw what is called an agile transition over the last couple of years. So that's one reason that I feel I can talk about this. The second reason is the product that we are actually providing to our customers is a test automation and test management product, and we are still in contact with our customers a lot, and we have a professional services team that is working at our customers within their development processes. So we see a lot of different customers with a lot of different development approaches, and we see what works and what doesn't. And we try to learn from that, obviously. I called this talk Why Agile is Not for Everybody, and I actually tried to Google that. And this is what actually comes up when you Google why do developers hate A? It comes up Agile. And I wondered why that is. And I'm also involved in a lot of interviews and talk to a lot of different people, developers, product owners, Scrum Masters, Agile coaches. And on the next couple of slides, I have a couple of anti-patterns for Agile or Agile transitions that I believe are the reason for something like that showing up in Google. And I try to split these anti-patterns depending on the role. So I have some anti-patterns that you see when you talk to product owners and Scrum Masters, a couple of anti-patterns that you see when you talk to development teams, and a couple when you look at the whole environment, other departments in the organization, your management, and so on and so forth. So first, product owners and Scrum Masters. What I see a lot is product owners being the team leads, product owners being technical architects, Scrum Masters being the team leads, and that's an actual quote, the last point. I talked to a Scrum Master that was applying for a job and asked him, what do you want, what do you expect? And he said he wants to work with his Scrum workers to get his things done. Okay, so he was referring to the development team as his Scrum workers, his slaves, basically. There's a couple of anti-patterns when you look at the product owners. For the environment, if management is not interested in any agile transition, that's a problem. It will not happen. If other departments don't follow suit and don't breathe that agile mindset, it's also a problem. And I'm thinking of support organizations, documentation departments, separate test departments, and things that that are in your environment in that regard. One anti-pattern that where you can recognize something like this: if sprints can be extended at will, just because your manager tells you if you can't get it done till end of sprint, let's extend it by 2 days, or 3, or how long it takes. And last but not least, the development team. If the agile mindset, if the agile approach is not well understood, it's also resulting in chaos, I think, and not agile methodology, and it's not much fun to work in a chaotic environment as opposed to getting all the benefits from the agile mindset. So if you don't really finish up stuff, done is not done. Done means not definition of done is done, but you just check the code in. If the team is not self-organized or doesn't try to be self-organized, if it doesn't take ownership for the code or the products, and also what you can see is that you have test sprints or hardening sprints at the end of your release cycle. So that I think that's anti-patterns like that are the reason why Google shows up that developers hate Agile. But there are a lot of things to like in Agile environments per se. If you look at the Agile manifesto and that individuals and interactions, you have to put over processes and tools, that working software is to put over comprehensive documentation, and so on and so forth. So this face-to-face communication, this iterative, incremental approach, self-organizing teams, taking over responsibility, direct communication with customers and getting early feedback. I think as a developer, it's fun to work in a environment where this actually works. So how did our road to Agile actually look like? I see 4 stages here, and what do you think is the first stage? I think it's probably too big an audience to have you guess, but usually what comes up is you have to write processes and tools in place. You have to think about methodology and stuff. I think the most crucial part is, and I heard this in the talk actually this morning, that you need to get the culture right. If the culture and the mindset is not fostering your agile development processes, it's a problem that you will not be able to correct with the right tool or process. And unfortunately, obviously, as you can imagine, changing the culture is not the easiest part of the agile transition, and you can't do it alone. And then the other things follow accordingly, but with less priority. So you have to get the methodology right, you have to build your organization in a way that works, and last but not least, you can talk about tools and processes. I can't talk about it in general, I can just talk about what worked in our organization. So talking about the culture, we were in a very fortunate position that we didn't only want to change from an engineering, from a developer's point of view, but also from top-down management wanted to change the culture. So together we worked on a couple of core values that we put in place and that every engineer, every employee of the company knows by heart. And if you look at these core values like customer success, innovation, trust and responsibility, open communication, and togetherness, you can see that it fits well with the Agile mindset. So this was a crucial part of getting this Agile transition done successfully. And just to mention this at this point, we are not done and we have not completed the Agile transition by any means. So that's the core values of the company, but I think the engineering culture in the organization is important as well and needs to follow suit. So when we talk about customer success, for example, our development team is also traveling to customers if need be. So we do not have a separate technical team that goes to customers. If we need to go to customers to help them implement the tool, for example, we staff that technical implementations out of our engineering team. Innovation is also deeply embedded into the engineering cultures. We have teams like events like our own version of a hackathon that is run once a year, which we call GIG. Actually, we have a bug fest. In terms of togetherness, we have things like beer busts. We have a community of practices that the engineers came up with themselves. So the culture is right, the core values are well understood by everybody in the company and also lived, and there is an engineering culture that allows agile development. So that was the first and crucial part, I think. And then we can talk about things like methodology. So the way we set it up is, I think, pretty much in line with how you do the agile, how you have agile teams. So we have Scrum-like teams. Every team consists of developers. The developers also do the testing. We have still separate test engineers, but they are embedded into the agile team. So we do not have a separate test team, although we had in the past. We have every team has one product owner, and we share agile coaches or scrum masters between the teams, and we also share the technical writers between the teams, which is not ideal, but that's the current stage, basically. The code is shared between the teams and not owned, so if you write a feature for a component, it doesn't mean that no other team can write another feature for the same component. Code is shared, not owned, but the quality of the code is a team responsibility. Nobody cares within Tricentis if the developer developed a bug or the tester didn't find a bug. Bottom line is there's a bug in the product that needs to be fixed. Okay, so it's a team responsibility. We had a couple of stages. Let me quickly build this slide. What we changed first with these agile teams is we changed them from component teams, so they really were component teams in the past, to feature teams. Okay, in the past, they just, as I just said before, the code was owned, not shared. Now the code is shared, not owned. So we had components teams, now we have feature team, one crucial part. We synchronized all the sprints. When we started to synchronize the sprints, we had already 5 agile teams on different sprint cycles, which was a mess, basically. As I said before, we had a separate test team. So we had handoffs between the developers in the agile teams and the test team being responsible for testing, basically, and we changed that. So quality is now embedded in the team. Quality is a team responsibility. Same thing for integration and continuous integration and continuous delivery efforts. They are also a team responsibility. And last but not least, we also put a system team in place. I don't know if you're familiar with the scaling frameworks that you see with Agile or with Scrum. Basically, if you go from one team Scrum to a multi-team Scrum, you have a couple of challenges. And SAFe, for example, one of the one of the scaling frameworks proposes a system team that doesn't do the testing or anything, but supports the other teams to get their stuff done. So supports them with infrastructure, supports them with methodology and stuff like that. I kid you not, in the past, it really looked like that to get a feature from inception to the customer. We had a lot of handovers between the teams. We had a lot of shared responsibility. We had a lot of waiting time because a feature was developed by the component teams. And until it ended up at the customer, it took an age. Now, I mean, of course, that's the ideal way. It doesn't always happen like this, but the idea is that the feature gets developed in the cross-functional team, cross-component, end-to-end, and then to the customer as quickly as possible. We are still struggling with scaling our Agile environment. Reason being, when we started, that's a look at our Agile teams. That's the actual names of the Agile teams. So our Agile teams pick the name themselves, and that's what they come up with, like X or C. Can't use more than one character, I guess. That was 2 years ago. Now we are already looking at that many Agile teams, and we are still growing. So that's the Agile teams and the system team that helps them keep their testing going, keep their environment going, and stuff like that. That's for the methodology. In terms of organization, we also had a lot of changes happening. 2-3 years ago, it looked like this. So that's a classical, normal org chart that you would see in any organization, I guess. We had a product development organization with a lot of team leads and stuff. We had a separate testing department. We had a professional services department that did technical services at our customers. And here's what we changed. So the whole product development now is called the engineering team, and it has a very slim engineering management team, just a couple of people. We don't have any team leads, and we don't have too many direct micromanaging things, I would say. The management team does the boring stuff, like handling vacation requests and making sure that the time tracking complies with Austrian regulations. But except from this boring stuff, the engineers in the engineering teams are actually organized in their Agile teams and work with the Agile teams on a daily basis. Next step is the technical services team, as I already mentioned, was moved into the engineering teams, and we staff customer engagements out of our Agile team. So if you need to go to the customer to deploy the product, it's very convenient that you also develop the product, because it's very easy to deploy it then. Next step is we got rid of the separate test team, and I know that's basically how it's supposed to be in the literature, that the test engineers or that the Agile team, that the Scrum team is responsible for testing as well. But if you look at bigger organizations like our customers are, for example, big banks, big insurance companies, big pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, they all have separate test teams, and most of the times they are also outsourced to big services organizations in India, for example. But we were able to change that and move it into the engineering team. Now we have another challenge. We added teams in other countries, so we have Polish development teams, and as you see, the challenges are still there to scale our Agile teams. Now, with all the team leads removed and a very flat hierarchy, what's the actual career path for developers? How do you move on? At Tricentis, we put competence over authority. So you don't start as a developer and then you get team lead and then you move on or whatever. You as a developer, and then based on your competence and your skills, you can move on, and it's highly valued if you are highly skilled. So it's just titles basically on the paper, but it's the appreciation that you get, and that it is actually considered a career path. Okay, so all the way up to architect, or you can move on to agile coaching. We have people that help coordinate our technical engagements at customers. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do based on your skills. Last but not least, I'm doing timing, 8 minutes. Tools and processes, obviously also important to get your landscape right, to get your processes right. I give you an example. We are using Jira as a defect tracking tool, and that's how our process looked like 3 years ago. I didn't count, but we had countless stages and transitions between tickets, and we were basically sending them around all the time. You can see a stage that's named explain, so if you didn't understand it, you could just change the status and send it back to the submitter, and then it would lay a couple of weeks until he got to explain it within the ticket and send it back and forth, and it was very unpleasant. That's how our process looks like today. So just 5 stages, you open a ticket, it either gets rejected or moved to the backlog within a reasonable amount of time, then it's in progress and then it's resolved. That's how it works now. So very lean process. Obviously, we also work on our continuous integration, continuous delivery tool chain. Now we have an enterprise tool for enterprise customers with which is a desktop application, and they don't roll out on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or even on a monthly basis. They roll out probably twice a year if we are lucky. So we do not have to actually deliver on a daily basis, but we want to be able to have a potentially shippable product after every sprint. We are not there yet, but we hope to be there in like half a year. So I will quickly go through this, or build it at least. We are still using Subversion and not Git. Every commit to Subversion triggers the build. Actually, most recent change from last week is that you can't check or commit to the trunk directly anymore. So we have now a gated check-in proof builds that are run before it's actually checked into the branch, into the trunk. One of the reasons being that as the engineering team grew, at the time the trunk build wasn't running actually was more common than it being green. So we moved to that gated check-in, which means you check in via the build server, it runs the unit test, it runs the build, runs the unit test, and only if everything is okay, it automatically checks it into the trunk, and you don't have to care anymore, and you basically can't break the build. Now we have a couple of feedback loops. Obviously, we get the unit test results back. Then we have a nightly integration, so we take the development of all the teams, we build the setup, and install it automatically. We run our integration tests using our own tool, which is, as I said, a test automation tool, and get the integration test results back. And at the end of the process, we hopefully have a setup that is potentially shippable. Right. So I think I want to end with this slide. Why do developers love Agile? I think there are, as I said, a lot of reasons to love Agile, but only if it's done right. And there are so many things that you can get wrong on any levels in the organization, from the culture to the methodology to the organization, and obviously also tools and processes. But if it's set up correctly, and I don't expect that it happens overnight, but if it's set up correctly, I think there's a lot of reasons every developer should love working in an Agile environment that actually works. That's actually alternative facts. That's not showing up in Google. I faked it. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Michael. We actually have a couple of questions. Speaking about culture,
Yeah.
There's a very insightful question from Myashenko Ramjak. When interviewing for team, would you say your hire only culturally fits? In other words, would you say your hire only culture? Are you transparent about your culture? Or are you only hiring developers that fit your culture?
So I wouldn't say we are like this classical startup that just talks about cultural fit. We are a very technology-driven environment, and we look a lot at skills and how candidates approach tasks. Also in the interview, in the hiring process. So we have like an assessment where they actually have to code, and we do code reviews with them in the assessment. But obviously, if I can somehow figure out in the hiring process that the candidate doesn't have an agile mindset, I probably will not hire him.
Yeah, that's another follow-up on this question is like, do you think new people can learn the culture? Can new hires learn the culture of your team?
I think they can come on board and actually appreciate the culture and benefit from the culture. If you don't want to work in an agile environment, if you can't deal with change at all and you don't like to respond to change, but you want to stick to a plan that you formulated months ago, then it's probably not the right place to be.
That's cool. Because there's a question from Kostas Kostas Apastalo, I guess it's. How did your company transition from component teams to feature teams? What was the sort of competence?
Well, I would say over time, when we added new agile teams and when we started to extend our product, we also were able to share the knowledge with the new teams and change up the teams a bit so that other people would also benefit from, the knowledge of the guys that just joined the team from another team. And then, with distributing the products over the teams, over time it just worked out.
Okay, I have one last question, so I can get to all questions. From Alexander Rashid, does every team own their own shippable product, or are multiple teams working on different parts of one product shipped to the customer?
So we have one product.
Are there any best practices?
That's actually
on
part
how
of the
to organize?
That's actually part of the challenge, right? We have one product, and all the teams are working on the same product, and we ship one product to the customer.
Good.
Yeah.
Michael Niessl, thank you very much.
Thank
Give a hand to Michael Niessl from Tricentis.